Hey, Slider Crusaders. So one of the taglines on our show is "Truth exists." It's sad that that even needs to be stated, but it does. This is a great example of why. This is a question that someone asked to Ben Shapiro at UConn.
As a woman and somebody going into the healthcare field, I personally don't think that I could have an abortion, just because morally I feel like for myself it wouldn't be the right choice. But how do you defend your opinion as a white, well-off, religious man? How do you defend your telling a woman what she can do with her body?
Because evil things are still evil, even if I'm a white, well-off religious man. And good things are still good, even if I'm a white, well-off religious man.
Let's go to the root of this. Again, truth exists. The progressive philosophy is that there's no such thing as truth. It's all relative. Truth is so relative that every question must be first filtered through your identity group. So in this case, the question is, is abortion immoral? Well, that depends. Are you a woman or are you a man? Are you rich or are you poor? Are you white or are you black? Are you an atheist or are you a Christian? Everything has to be thought of through the prism of your identity group. Just the other day, we talked with the great Jordan Peterson. And every time I hear Jordan Peterson talk, he's amazing. But he uses this phrase, postmodern Neo-Marxism. And it's a lot, right? When you hear that, you're like, what does that mean? So I asked him to break that down as simply as possible. What does that mean? What is postmodern Neo-Marxism? Here's what he said.
The basic postmodernist claim is that the world is something like a battleground of competing power interests, basically defined by race and ethnicity. It's identity politics, I suppose, is the shorthand version of it, and that there's no real right or wrong. There's just competing power interests. There's a very large number of ways of interpreting the world, and that people tend to interpret it in keeping with their power aims. So that's postmodernism in a two-sentence summary. Mm-hmm. Neo-Marxism is the idea that it's the transformation of the old Marxist idea of the working class against the working class, or against the ruling class, let's say, against the wealthy class. It's transformed again into something resembling identity politics, where it's oppressor versus oppressed, but the categories are more like ethnicity and race and gender. And so the combination of the two puts us in a landscape where we're all increasingly identified by our group membership, and the world is seen as a battleground between oppressed groups and oppressor groups. And it's a very, very toxic ideology, and it's destroying the universities. And the universities are in turn, as they just pointed out in the Boston Globe this week, pumping their brand of vitriolic poison out into the broader world. Mm-hmm. And so I've been objecting to that because I think it's a very bad idea, this descent back into tribalism.
So we got postmodern, that's identity politics. That's what says there's many ways of interpreting the world, and people are supposed to interpret it based on the power interests of their own identity group. In this case, man and woman. Then you have Neo-Marxism, right? So that's the oppressor versus oppressed. In this case, men and women, but especially wealthy religious men. But men in general oppressing women. Okay, so let's go back to the question, and you can see how this postmodern Neo-Marxism way of thinking has infiltrated the minds of young people. Listen to her first 3 words.
As a woman.
There it is, already. First 3 words, battle lines are being drawn. Already truth is being defined as relative. As a woman. That should really sound as absurd as saying, as a woman, the acceleration of gravity is 9.8 meters per second. As a woman, the earth orbits the sun. As a woman, there's 365 days in a year. No. It doesn't matter if you're a woman for these things to be true. They are true, period. Regardless of your gender, your ethnic group, your religious beliefs, or any other group identity you might have, truth exists. It's not relative. So she starts off with, as a woman. But then the ultimate question is, how do you defend your opinion as a man? Specifically a white, well-off religious man. So we even have subgroups to the identity, right? So how do you defend your position on this, your opinion, as someone from a group that we have determined can't have an opinion, right? So we in this group, women, have decided that you in this other group, men, can't have an opinion on this topic that's literally about life or death. Do you see how messed up this is? Now, of all the topics in America, this topic, abortion, is the one where this belief, this toxic belief, has become most embedded in the conversation. Because the original pro-abortion advocates framed it as a woman's choice. So that created this chasm that men can't have a say. And men have abandoned this issue. A better word is abdicated. They've abdicated it. To abdicate means that you fail to undertake a responsibility or a duty. So men have, on the whole, handed over this matter of life or death and said, you know what, you're right. Because of this identity group I'm in, I have no say on this. That's sad, because if there's any issue that men should have a say in, it's abortion, because men protect the vulnerable. And what's more vulnerable than an unborn baby? And when there's an unplanned pregnancy, what's needed, maybe more than any time ever, is for men to step up, for men to love and lead, and for other men to mentor and encourage and walk alongside. You know, the series that we're doing on masculinity, right? The 4 archetypes, the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover. An unplanned pregnancy is an opportunity for both the would-be dad and other men to be all 4 of these aspects of true masculinity at one time. But because we're in the wrong identity group, men are told to do nothing and have done nothing. And hundreds of thousands of babies are killed every year. The root of this is identity politics. And this is perfectly represented by this woman's question, which says, as a woman, and then ends with, how do you defend your opinion as a man? So Ben Shapiro rightly responds. He says, because evil things are still evil, even if I'm a white, well-off religious man. He says, my identity has nothing to do with what is right or wrong. I love that. My identity has nothing to do with what is right or wrong. So why is postmodern neo-Marxism and this identity politics, why is this so dangerous? Because we can't communicate with each other. Why is this belief that truth is relative so dangerous? Because we can't talk to each other. And we'll never come to any conclusion about anything if we don't first admit that truth exists. If we retreat into our identity and truth and our morality is centered around our identity, then morality doesn't exist at all. And this is the best line of it all. I refuse to surrender to the idea that I can't have a moral stance on an issue that is of concern to society and concern to the well-being of the United States, just because of the color of my skin or whatever. Do not surrender your responsibility to defend the truth, no matter who tells you you can't.